All right, welcome back to our board meeting, and we're here at MBN. So, Brian, glad you brought your whole team here, and turn it over to you. I think you're going to do about a 45-minute presentation, and then there'll be Q&A from...
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
Take it away, Brian.
Well, we appreciate you coming to visit us today to learn more about MBN and also to help us celebrate Al-Hurra's 10-year anniversary. The men and women of MBN are very proud of what they've been able to accomplish over the last 10 years. But we also realize we operate in a very dynamic marketplace, and we continue to find new ways to reach and impact our audience. After I provide a short overview of MBN, I'll introduce you to selected members of our team who on a daily basis produce and present our TV, radio, and digital products. Well, to start with, MBN is a multimedia organization. It consists of Al-Hurra TV, Al-Hurra Iraq TV, Radio Sawa, Radio Alpha Darfur, and our various digital properties. MBN's mission is to provide objective, accurate, relevant information on the Middle East, the world, and the United States. In doing so, we support democratic values and freedom of expression by expanding the spectrum of ideas and perspective in the region's media. MBN is a hybrid of the traditional surrogate mission of reporting on news from the region, as well as presenting U.S. foreign policy and American values. In reading Undersecretary Stengel's message to the public diplomacy community last week, I was struck with a point he also made earlier this morning. It is important to our strategic interest that our audience understand our foreign policy, even if they don't always agree with it. That's part of MBN's mission every day, to help the people in the Middle East understand foreign policy. MBN operates in a very challenging environment. As we've already heard this morning, in most Middle East countries, the U.S.'s standing is at an all-time low. Almost daily, in many countries, local media attacks U.S. policy and distort American values. In addition to a strong anti-American sentiment, Freedom House's most recent report on press freedom showed that the Middle East is at the bottom of the list. Not one country is ranked in the free category. Traditional media in much of the region is constrained by emergency rule, state ownership, self-censorship, and laws against insulting public figures. Hardly a day goes by without a new example where a journalist or a blogger is attacked, harassed, arrested, or in too many instances killed. The media environment is also highly competitive. There are reportedly over 600 Arab satellite TV channels. However, more channels doesn't make for better journalism. Many stations remain under state control or either funded or supported by political or sectarian interest. In addition, over the last 10 years, a large number of new international broadcasters have also launched Arab language channels. BBC, France 24, Russia Today, and China TV are just a few examples. It's important to note that each one of these countries has decided it was in their interest to have a direct voice in the region. We believe here that direct broadcasting is one of the few ways the U.S. can communicate information and ideas directly to the people of the Middle East and North Africa in an unfiltered way. So what is MBN's programming strategy? In this competitive environment, MBN is working with a pan-Arab multimedia programming strategy. We must address a large and diverse region consisting of 22 countries over a large geographic area with a population of over 350 million people that have pronounced religious, cultural, and in some cases linguistic differences. So MBN's strategy is to ensure that the people in this large region have direct access to accurate news, varying perspectives, presentation of foreign policy, and a forum to exchange new ideas. We'll start this morning by showing the role that news and current affairs plays in Al-Hurra's strategy. As a 24-hour-a-day news and information channel, newscasts and coverage of breaking news provide the framework of Al-Hurra's programming day. News programming lays the foundation for the balance and objectivity that our audience expects from Al-Hurra. Let's play this short little video that shows how news and current affairs fits into the Al Hurra programming strategy.
As the sun rises, Al Hurra's team of correspondents throughout the Middle East and North Africa are gathering news for its 2-hour-long primetime newscast, top and bottom of the hour news updates, covering breaking news as it happens. Al Hurra's extensive coverage of the revolutions in Egypt over the past 3 years has been a testament to our informed and courageous team on the ground. When bomb blasts rocked Lebanon, we were on the scene, getting reaction from the streets. And when voters go to the polls, we are there, providing extensive coverage of elections from Iraq to Morocco.
I think that what's happening in Syria...
Al Hurra doesn't only report on the Middle East. It is the only Arabic language network with dedicated correspondents at the White House, State Department, Congress, and the Pentagon. Al Hurra carries live events relevant to our audience, including President Obama's speech at the National Prayer Breakfast earlier this month.
Therefore, believe in the inherent dignity of every human being, dignity that no earthly power can take away. And central to that dignity is freedom of religion, the right of every person to practice their faith how they choose.
Our recent coverage of the State of the Union address demonstrates American democracy in action, interviewing members from both sides of the aisle.
Work out some diplomatic solutions with Iran, maybe we can engage them on Syria.
In addition to event-driven news and U.S. foreign policy, Al Hurra's newscasts highlight the U.S. democratic experience, human and civil rights, and American values. It is not only important what we cover, but how we cover it.
Salam, peace to all.
Al Hurra goes beyond the headlines. After the evening newscast, the free hour connects via satellite links guests throughout the region and experts from America to discuss the main news story of the day, giving viewers a broader perspective. Al Hurra's All Directions provides a weekly roundup of U.S. foreign policy towards the Middle East, featuring specialists from U.S. think tanks that debate the U.S. role and impact in the
importance
region.
about an election that is run freely and fairly.
Adhering to high journalistic standards, Al Hurra strives to present all sides of the story. Accuracy, objectivity, and balance. News coverage the viewer needs.
Now, to give you a better sense of how Al Hurra covers foreign affairs, I'd like to introduce to you Michel Gondor, Al Hurra's State Department correspondent and also host on several of our current affairs shows that discuss foreign policy. Michel.
Thank you, Brian. Hello, everyone. I've been covering the State Department since 2004. My job is to highlight U.S. policy regarding international and regional events and presenting it to our viewers in a simple way. I do that through participating in daily press briefings and interviews with State Department officials. Our interviews with Secretaries Rice and Clinton generated a lot of interest in the region, with many media outlets reprinting quotes. As a member of the press corps, I've traveled with the Secretaries of State to the Middle East and Europe, covering meetings and conferences related to the region. A couple of weeks ago, I accompanied Secretary Kerry to Geneva II talks in Switzerland and the International Economic Forum in Davos, where we were able to update our viewers on the latest news, the Secretary's meetings, the U.S. position and reactions towards Syria's events. During his concluding press conference, Al Hurra's name came up one more time when we were given the opportunity to ask Secretary Kerry a question which was broadcast live worldwide. In addition to reporting from the State Department, once a week I host the daily political talk show, Free Hour. Although newscasts are event-driven, Free Hour lets us set the agenda and provide extra emphasis and analysis to the most important topics of the day. We host newsmakers, analysts, journalists from all over the world, including government officials, political figures, and diplomatic figures. And in fact, we had the opportunity to host Ambassador Crocker days before he left Baghdad as U.S. Ambassador to Iraq in 2009. We inform our viewers by showing all the angles of the picture. We don't leave any stone unturned. We engage with them through social media, and we provide them the outlet to express their opinions and ask questions. 2 weeks ago, I hosted a program on the latest round of Geneva talks. The guests included a Syrian member of parliament, the Syrian National Coalition ambassador to France, a Russian political analyst, and an American expert on Syrian affairs. The panel debated whether the US and Russia should have resolved their differences on the future of Syria before convening in Geneva, and the pros and cons of the partition of Syria to achieve a ceasefire. The discussion reflected the views of participants and the neutrality and the plurality of the program. In addition to political talk shows, we had dedicated program on social issues, and this video will give you a better idea.
Al-Hurra sheds a light on the most important issues, challenging freedom and democracy in the Middle East and North Africa. Programs such as Eye on Democracy, Women's Views, Gulf Talks, and Stories with Akram Khuzam are dedicated to highlight issues such as political reform, human rights, including the rights of women, religious freedom, and the freedom of the press, through reports and in-depth interviews. Opposition members and activists turn to Al-Hurra to tell their stories without the threat of government interference. These programs examine stories such as the fate of political activists held in prison for their beliefs, female Syrian refugees that are forced into marriage to feed their families, the reasons behind the emergence of the Salafi movements in Sudan, the Algerian government's crackdown on private media outlets, and social media activists in Bahrain sent to prison for insulting the king on Twitter. Al-Hurra is clear in its mission and continues to tell stories and addresses topics that are not regularly heard in the Arab media.
Thank you. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Michelle. As I said in my introduction, Al-Hurra follows a pan-Arab strategy. But within that strategy, we have developed some individual programs that attempt to maximize their impact in specific key countries. Fran Myers has created several of these shows, and I'll let her tell you her strategy. Fran.
Thank you, Brian, and hello, everybody. So why did we create Al-Yom, which is our big show? Al-Yom was created to enhance Al-Hurra's ability to connect with the viewer. If you go back, we had external critics who complained that the network was static, that we weren't relevant enough, that we were produced too heavily right here in Springfield, and that we were not having a feel or a connection. So Al-Yom was specifically designed to flip that reality right on its face. So what did we do? We created a new dynamic format. We built fresh, beautiful sets, and we put them in the perfect locations in the Middle East. We hired young, smart, and good-looking anchors and presented topics that are easy to digest and then heavily engage with the viewer. Now, Al-Hurra had a new approach so that it could sell its news, its information, and its mission. And the strategy worked. Al Hurra was therefore greeted with its huge amount of positive media about this new show, about its look, about its format. National surveys and a focus group show that up to 75% of all Al Hurra viewers who watch Al Yom once return every single week to watch it again, which is a huge television story. Let's take a look. Al Yom. Al Yom's daily live 3-hour news magazine with studios in Cairo, Jerusalem, Beirut, Dubai, and Washington, D.C., and its next day morning repeat represents nearly 20% of the entire programming grid. In Cairo, Al Hurra is the only network, local or foreign, that broadcasts full shows from our studio right on the Nile. A spectacular view and critical location around the corner from Tahrir Square. At the same time, Al Yom is the only show with a live studio and host broadcasting 5 days a week from Jerusalem to the rest of the Arab world. We cover the entire Gulf from our Dubai studio, and our Beirut studio covers the Levant, including Syria. We are in high-profile places that matter, and the people know we are there, offering a unique viewer experience. Al Yom's powerful format showcases our anchors, appealing to local audiences while having a pan-regional reach. The viewers connect with the local anchors as one of their own. While watching custom and original features, impactful stories such as the marriage of 2 Syrian refugees in a Lebanese refugee camp. Al Yom sets the agenda every day, making sure the right guests, the right stories, and the right angles are in place every single show. Another part of that agenda is the Americas franchise. That features our American culture, showing our diversity and our tolerance for all people. Al Yom has fully integrated social media with our hip young segment B-Link. And live tweets throughout the 3 hours, uploading hundreds of original branded features to YouTube and reaching over 10 million views. And then there is Facebook Al Yom, engaging and connecting with over 1 million fans. Al Yom, the big show that makes the big difference. And adding to the success of Al Yom is Rahin Alafin, which is our new Egyptian show, and that means where do we go from here? This show is all about the youth. And like the characters in the show, they're all trying to figure out where their lives are taking them since the Egyptian Revolution. Rahin Alafin features a diverse young cast that mirrors the Egyptian society. Christian, Muslim, Salafist, rich, poor, educated or not, men, women, all openly discussing religion, tolerance, chaos of the government, lack of jobs, education, marriage, women's rights, and what each one wants for the future. No scripts. A first-of-its-kind program. Rahin Alafin has received a lot of media attention. We placed it on popular Egyptian network Al Hayat, increasing both distribution and viewership for the show. Over 6 million additional viewers watched Season 1 on Al Hayat, verified by the Pan-Arab Research Center. And some more good news about Rahin Alafin. When Governor Mihand and President Conniff and I were in Egypt in December for the launch and the press conference of Rahin Al Lafine. We had a private meeting with the general manager of Al Hayat, who had told us that due to the success of season 1, he intends to air season 2. So once again, we're going to get more distribution, more viewers, and more mission at relatively no cost. Thank you so much, Brian.
Thank you, Fran. As I said in the introduction, the main Al Hurra strategy is a pan-Arab strategy. However, in 2004, Congress created a separate Al Hurra channel for Iraq in order to maximize impact in an important country. This short video will give you an idea of the kind of impact a local channel can have.
Al Hurra Iraq was launched in 2004 in the wake of the Iraq War to provide Iraqi citizens with reliable and unbiased news and information to help serve them in developing the foundation for a democratic society. Our dedicated team of journalists across the country and in Springfield, Virginia, produce Iraq-specific programs, including a daily primetime newscast, discussion programs, and shows that feature the best of Iraqi culture and society. Since Al Hurra Iraq is a local indigenous TV channel, the 24/7 programming resonates with the viewers by fulfilling a void in their media landscape. We cover local events throughout the country with a strong commitment towards providing a voice to the men and women on the street. We also provide timely, relevant, and thorough coverage of current affairs issues, thereby capturing the pulse of the people. Al Hurra Iraq sponsors election candidate debates, conducts investigative reporting, and presents round-the-clock news, all in the tradition of the free press. The Iraq Today program is widely regarded as a newscast of record and is watched by millions nightly. In addition, it provides access to minorities, women, and youth that is not available to them from other broadcasters. Al Hurra Iraq covers not just Baghdad, but has 21 correspondents throughout the country who report from all segments of society. During the recent turmoil in Anbar province, our correspondent Omar Al-Ubaidi was one of the few reporting from this troubled and dangerous region. We don't just cover the news, but we go beyond. Our recent co-production with U.S. Institute of Peace, Salam Shabab, follows a group of diverse Iraqi teens as they work together and compete in a series of challenges for a common purpose: to become ambassadors of peace. Al Hurra Iraq, a local channel with a broad appeal, represents Iraqi programming for an Iraqi audience.
We've spent most of the morning talking about TV, but I don't want to ignore and neglect the role that radio continues to play in the region. I'd like to introduce Maha Rabia, Radio Sawa's managing editor, who will describe Radio Sawa's format and strategy. Maha.
Thank you, Brian. Hello, everyone. Radio Sawa was created in 2002 to reach young adults in the Arab world. This audience was not interested in listening to much news. They wanted to be informed, but in a different way. Radio Sawa format of mixing Arabic and Western music with news in short, digestible bites appealed to this demographic. And this way, Sawa responded to the way these people listen to radio these days. As a result, Sawa has been able to attract a significant portion of the youth population. Currently, Radio Sawa signal is broadcast across 42 FM and 4 medium wave transmitters throughout the Middle East and North Africa. However, Radio Sawa is not just one radio station. It is 7 different streams tailored musically to the taste and culture of 7 different regions. Our listeners may come for the music, but they do stay for the news. Sawa provides 6 hours of news a day. We have 2 newscasts per hour, 24/7, and those newscasts range in length from 5 to 15 minutes. We also created feature programs that provide a different emphasis and a more in-depth look at mission-oriented topics, like entrepreneurship in the Arab world, the plight of Syrian refugees, and rights of citizens and journalists in Egypt. Sawa transitions easily to cover breaking news. We break to broadcast events such as Secretary Kerry's at Geneva II conference on Syria, the last month's State of the Union address, and breaking news wherever that may happen, in Tahrir Square, in Libya, or wherever we can report from. We also, all of this could not be happened without our team of broadcasters here in the United States and about 60 correspondents throughout the Middle East, North Africa, and Europe. And Radio Sawa broadcasting is often picked up by local media, especially when it has something to do with the Middle East. We conducted an interview with Senator McCain that was picked up with many outlets in Egypt because it was about U.S. military aid to Egypt. And audiences who are loyal to Radio Sawa say that our broadcasts increase their knowledge of the U.S. and of current affairs. Our research also shows that they stay tuned when the news comes on. For example, in Morocco, 61% say that they stay tuned and they listen with interest to our newscasts. However, having said that, Sawa does face challenges. And one of the challenges that Sawa faces is the rapid growth and saturation of the radio marketplace. To counter this, we try to sound more local and be more interactive. Recent events in the Middle East have given Sawa opportunities for growth, let's say. We added 3 different transmitters in Libya, and we are embarking on launching another transmitter in Mauritania in the spring. And we keep asking governments for more permits to build more transmitters and to get licenses for those in the countries where we do not have transmitters. We're also looking into possibilities of syndicating Sawa content on local stations. However, we found there is more interest in the music rather than the news, but we keep trying. We're also working with the Voice of America to blend our Arabic news content with their Africa FMs. One thing we have not touched upon is Afia Darfur. Afia Darfur is a standalone program that brings news and information to Arabic-speaking audiences in Darfur and in refugee camps in eastern Chad. Let's watch. This daily 30-minute newscast on shortwave radio provides information that is not accessible through the official media, such as reports on humanitarian aid, peace talks, and refugee conditions. Afia Darfur delves into topics that impact the lives of the refugees, such as food shortage and the lack of water in Darfur, and how prosecutors are given no power to prosecute criminals. We share one such story with you.
4 men of Al-Hawazma tribe joined the Sudanese government army to fight justice and equality rebel group, and they were captured. A few days later, the leader of Al-Hawazma tribe called into Afia Darfur to explain that these people are fighting just for money and they don't have anything to do with politics. A week later, the spokesperson of Justice and Equality Movement called Afia Darfur to say he heard the report and he would take that into consideration. A week later, the tribesmen were released. The representative of the Sudanese government said after the breakdown of Ad-Doha peace talk that could never happen without Afia Darfur.
Continuing to make a difference in the lives of Darfurians, Afia Darfur. Thank you very much. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Maha. Digital media is fast becoming a critical way for us to reach an important segment of our population. Last year, MBN created a new digital media department. I'd like to introduce Davin Hutchinson, we call him Hutch, who will explain and describe our digital media strategy. Hutch.
Thank you, Brian, and thank you, Board. What is MBN Digital? Plainly spoken, it's the original text articles, the breaking radio reports from our colleagues, the video reports and video programming on the websites of alhura.com and radiosawa.com. It's the 24-hour digital streams of all of the flavors of Sawa and of Alhura. And it's also the Alhura iPhone and Android app that we did with Rob and ODDI in the back. And all our social media pages on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. That's what we call MBN Digital. Through these properties, we reach millions of Arabs, mostly under the age of 30, every month. And thousands engage with us every day, meaning like, comment, or share on our stories, primarily on Facebook. In the past year, we've learned a lot about the behavior of our audience in the Middle East. We haven't completely figured it out, obviously, but we continue to experiment with content every day, what we write about, how we write about it, to see how they behave. One thing we've learned this year is mobile-first internet is happening right now in the Gulf, not in 5 years. The vast majority of our audience who come to our websites or Facebook properties from Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, and Qatar, they are on smartphones or they are on tablets, according to our own internal Google Analytics. Yet in Egypt and North Africa and Iraq, it's the desktop experience that is dominant. And we hope and we expect that this will change quickly as smartphones and feature phones become more widely available. We've learned that traffic, engagement, and impact happens when we write reports that ask deeper questions about social issues and then open up our platforms for debate. We believe in providing what we call news that listens. And by that I mean, if you read the headlines on our websites, you'll see a lot of questions, question marks, calls to actions, asking people to comment about daily news events. And these actually work much better for us than reporting straight news in terms of what audiences respond to. These articles about deep social questions can create viral stories for us, and we've done this several times. For example, we wrote a story about the fairness of the decision to strip citizenship rights away from Bahrainis who protest against the government. And we had a headline phrased in a question with Sharik Baraik, which means share your opinion, and a poll. Well, after a couple days, we got over 230,000 people who responded to this poll and almost 1 million visits, mostly on mobile phones from Bahrainis. And this isn't a one-off. We've done this on salaries versus cost of living in Saudi Arabia, the future of Western Sahara, and so on. We've also learned don't spam your Facebook users with a lot of content. You have to be selective. It's better to pick something that's on, one or two things that's on somebody's mind during a given day, and then try to foster a conversation around that. We have been primarily relying on Facebook throughout the region. Twitter has proved useful somewhat to us in the mobile areas, but we do use Facebook to start these conversations. Currently, our digital properties reach about 1.4 million people monthly, and that's a doubling of our website traffic in the last calendar year. 2014 is off to a strong start, again, because of viral stories that we're learning to get better at. And as far as our Facebook communities go, here's kind of how it's broken down. Rahin Al-Afain is about 428,000, Free Hour 527,000, Al-Yom just past 1 million, Radio Sawa about 3 million, and Al-Hura about 3.4 million. And of course there's some overlap there because people associate with multiple brands. We have learned about tough lessons this year, challenges that are ahead of us, and we have to be prepared for those. We've learned if we stop innovating, it's at our own peril. Right now we're working with ODDI on a Radio Sawa app. This is an audio-first app. Imagine mission-oriented news combined with your favorite on-demand radio streams. And the idea here is to kind of create a Trojan horse for a literacy-challenged area where the music plus the text articles and the on-demand podcast can reach people that you're not reaching right now. We've also realized that it's very difficult to keep up with changes in technology, so we have what we call knowledge shares. When somebody who's an expertise in Twitter or video production or in infographics can then share that with the team. And we do that across radio, television, and digital as well. I want to conclude with you guys on the notion of impact. It's very hard to measure impact, as you all know. It's easier with digital media because quantitatively, you can see things. This year we've had 477,000 individual comments responding to our stories, either on our websites or on Facebook. And qualitatively, you'll see a lot of response like this if you dig down into the comments regarding praise for our coverage in women's rights, tolerance, or free press, showing that we're really starting conversations. When we do write about freedom of expression or write about American ingenuity or racial tolerance or gender equality, the great thing about digital media is people can talk back to you immediately in real time. And we do believe that this impact will increase because we believe that it's incumbent upon us. We have to learn to listen better. Thank you.
I know we're doing questions at the end. Can I ask a question
Sure.
now? Is that all right?
Yeah, you're the boss.
Here. Do you across? I know in Iran there's a firewall and there's censorship of new media. Anywhere else in where you guys are on the internet, do you find anybody restricting usage on mobile phones or tablets, or is it pretty open in most of the
Well, in
Arab
terms of
society?
access to certain websites, I would say the closest thing would be in Syria right now. I mean, it's in chaos. I was there in 2009, and everybody had sort of a software on their laptop to get through a wormhole because things were blocked. In the Gulf, that's often the case. They have free zones where you can access media, but outside of the free zones, certain things are blocked.
Yeah.
I think the biggest concern right now, though, is sort of the behavior and the example making you're seeing with governments, particularly in the Gulf, when people do comment against a ruler or a society or the economy on Twitter, for example, that they're made an example of and perhaps sent to prison for writing a poem on a tweet or something like that. So I think it's not as much technological as creating sort of an environment of fear where it's going to be hard
So it's monitoring as opposed to restricting is what is the issue. Yeah.
And again, it's not monolithic.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
Well, before turning to the rest of your questions,
I've got a bunch, yeah.
in closing, I'd like to say a few words about our audience, our impact, and our challenges. According to BBG research, MBN has an unduplicated audience of about 30 million viewers and listeners on a weekly basis. We have a separate TV audience of about 22 million viewers and a Radio Sawa audience of about 11 million listeners. This research also tells us something about the makeup, the composition of our audience. Our TV audience is generally male, over 35, that are interested in the news. They're news seekers. Our radio audience is younger, less than 35, more balanced between men and women, and their makeup prefers news in shorter newscasts. They don't watch long news channels. Our online audience is generally male, even younger, 24 years or less, is tech savvy, and has a high degree of education. So we believe our audience across our platforms represent a fairly good cross-section of society based on age, gender, and educational background. In terms of media preference, research also tells us that TV is the overwhelmingly dominant way people prefer to consume their news, with over 90% using TV as a way to gain their news and information. While radio is declining as a news source, still 50% of the audience in the Middle East consume news on the radio. And while online is increasing as a source of news, it still significantly trails radio and TV. But the online audience tends to be concentrated in the Gulf, where approximately 3/4 of the audience has access to the internet, whereas the rest of the Middle East, the number of people with access to the internet is much less, sometimes in the single digits. But just measuring and describing the audience isn't enough. We need to know, are we making an impact? Does it make a difference to the audience that they've watched our programming, listened to our programming? As you know, the BBG has been wrestling with this issue of impact for many years. In the past, we've had to use indirect indicators such as anecdotes or press citations, media pickup, and the like. But we need to continue to strive to find ways to more objectively measure impact. In the last go-round on our national survey questionnaires, we included several questions as an attempt to get a better handle on impact. And some of the preliminary results of these new questions has been very encouraging. On the questionnaires asking Al-Hurra watchers, they responded by saying that watching Al-Hurra, the content, helped them form opinions on important issues and increase their understanding of current affairs and democracy. So we've tried to put these questions into different categories to see what it all adds up to. We have reach, which is the number, and then we've come up with questions on engagement, questions that would indicate whether the programming has caught the interest of the respondent, and then added value. These are questions that try to gauge the audience's belief of whether they've learned something that they didn't know before after watching our program. So to illustrate some of these preliminary results, we're using Morocco as an example, and we found some interesting results for both Al-Hurra and Radio Sawa. For example, under engaging, we see that over 50% of the Al-Hurra and Radio Sawa audience say that what they learned from the channel inspired them to learn more about a particular issue. And also, under adding value in Morocco, we found that 75% of Sawa's audience say that listening to the station has helped their understanding of current affairs. And 67% of the Al-Hurra audience in Morocco say that watching the channel has increased their understanding of democracy. So these are just preliminary indications, but we believe may hold a better way to have stronger objective measures of impact than some of the elements and measures we've used in the past. We will continue to experiment with the next round of our country surveys to see if we can come up with questions that better gauge impact. So in closing, I'd like to say a few words about our challenges. Everything isn't rosy. Over the past 10 years, though, we have continually reassessed our programming. We've used technology and improved workflow to increase efficiencies. For example, the digital department that we're so proud of and Hutch talked about, we couldn't have imagined even the need for such a department 10 years ago. We built that department without any increase in our budget. We have funded it solely through reallocation internally of our resources. We do that frequently. Our environment is very dynamic. It has changed a lot over the last few years, and we continue to move things around, find different ways of doing business. But the ability to reallocate resources is now being felt with the budget cuts, as I know the board has been wrestling with these themselves, and it's a very difficult time. But it will seriously constrain our ability to respond to changing circumstances in the future. Our base has been cut for the first time, and it will have an effect on our era programming, and that is an unfortunate state of affairs that we all have to deal with. And we'll continue to find ways to adjust and adapt to changing circumstances, but it's going to be increasingly difficult. Also, another challenge, and it's been a theme throughout our presentation this morning, is that we use a pan-era programming strategy to address a large and diverse market of 22 countries across a vast area. Ideally, to maximize our impact, we would like to have separate channels, as we have successfully seen with Iraq, in places like Egypt, Syria, or the Maghreb. But once again, we realize that there are funding shortages. But that is a challenge in our programming strategy, a limiting factor. We also need to improve brand awareness. Our research tells us that in several of our key countries, the potential audience isn't sufficiently aware of Al-Hurra, in this case, and what it has to offer. As I said before, they have many choices. Our audience has over 600 channels. And to get them to add Al-Hurra into their bouquet of choices is an area we need to do a better job at. So in response, we are planning on creating a dedicated marketing and promotion office in the region that has the sole purpose to find ways to promote the brand, pursue program placement opportunities on local domestic channels, and pursue co-production opportunities with appropriate partners. Our people are our most important asset. Almost every day, our overseas correspondents are at risk. As you know, Bashar Fahmy has been missing for 18 months in Syria. We need to find ways to protect our staff, but still cover the important stories required of us. And a final challenge is we need to retain, motivate, and attract talent in an era of declining resources. This is now, and will be even more so in the future, a formidable management challenge. So in closing, to bring us back to Al-Hurra's 10-year anniversary, I'd like to show a short video recaps Al-Hurra's first 10 years.
We have spent 10 years searching for the truth and shaping it into words to deliver accurate news. We have covered important events at varied locations and sometimes put our lives in danger to document moments that have changed history.
I think that what's happening
Today, we continue our journalistic mission amongst hardships, but with hope and aspiration to be the place where people turn for objectivity. Al-Hurra, 10 years and counting.
So that concludes our presentation, and we welcome your questions.
Great. First of all, Brian, thank you on behalf of the board. It's great to see the team in addition to you today. So thanks to you, and thanks for all your guys' hard work. So I have about 17 questions, but I'll just start with one and then turn it over to my fellow board members and audience members. I have actually a specific one, which is let me just start with a difficult one, right? Which is credibility, right? So a friend of mine who's in the region for another network told me that there are certain words in Arabic that are used to describe certain things in the region, whether it's the anniversary of Israel's independence, or whether it's somebody who dies in the Palestinian territories, or whatever, and that these words to an American might seem offensive, but in the region are just the words that people use. And he told me Al-Hurra will never be credible in the region, no matter how good the journalism is, because you don't use the words that we use. Well, how do you respond to that? And I guess more broadly speaking is, how do we, in the context of what we just heard on the panel before, how do we get credibility in a region with such anti-Americanism and a kind of a bias towards us going in? Start with a tough one.
Could I just add on to that?
Yeah.
One example that, again, your Arabic-speaking staff would be very familiar with is, when a Palestinian is killed, say, as a result of Israeli action, he or she is always referred to as shaheed, martyr. Obviously, we don't do that. So there's a deeper question here. In my view, not simply credibility, but again, who we are, what our values are. Because if we start using those kinds of terms, we are going to be hearing from it.
Well, that's the crux of the matter. We don't feel like we can use those kind of terms, but if you're a 22-year-old, Egyptian listening to Al-Hurra and you don't hear that term, you hear a different term, can you believe in what you're listening to? It's starting to go right to a hard one to start off, but
believe me, from day one, those are issues that we have studied and debated long and hard here. We don't take the choice of words lightly. We study, we discuss them, but the ambassador is right. The use of the right word says a lot about who we are and what our values are. So we don't bend to what they want, what some people in the audience want. We do stand by our mission and what we're trying to do in the marketplace. Does it hurt our ability to attract an audience? It may, but we have to be true to who we are first. The credibility will come, and I believe it has come a long ways in 10 years, despite navigating all those issues. When you show programs that show Senator McCain coming on criticizing the administration, to show Secretary Clinton in front of a congressional committee being grilled on the Benghazi crisis. When they see those events time after time, it says a lot about our credibility that we show that, but also about the American experience, American democracy. And that is eye-opening to the people in the Middle East who have never experienced, even in an abstract way, the concept of checks and balances and balance of power. So it all gets tied together about who we are. We don't hide from the fact that we're the American channel, that we have American funding. In some cases, it may be a calling card, because there is, as the Undersecretary wrote in his paper last week, there is an interest in what our policy is. They may not agree with it, but they want to know. And we want Al-Hur to be the place that they come to find out about that. And that's why we had the questions earlier about wanting to have senior officials on. We want to be known as the place to come to understand American foreign policy. And sometimes we get frustrated because other channels get those senior officials before we do. So to help us realize our potential, we would like to be able to have and be known as a station that puts forth that, but not in a propagandistic way. You know, having criticism of the administration. We have the whole gamut of think tank in Washington come on our shows. Discuss and debate with people from the region and people from the administration. I mean, there's no issue, you know, probably more contentious than what do we do about Syria. We have that robust debate all the time. So you don't come on and hear people just support the administration. You hear that full range. And I don't believe that there are many shows in the Middle East that present that full range where America has a voice. Usually we're excluded from those debates. So I'm sorry I went on a little long, but
it's a great answer. Let me open it up to anybody else who has a question. May
I add something to what Brian said? We avoid using terminology that one side or the other uses. We are journalists. We use an objective language, whatever we cover. Even when Osama bin Laden was alive, we would not say terrorist because he had not been convicted in a court of law that said he was a terrorist. And also, Shaheed, like Ambassador Crocker said, in Egypt itself, the people who were killed during the uprising 3 years ago, some people call them martyrs, and some people in Egypt object to that terminology. So the terminology we use in our coverage of news is what journalists, objective journalists, balanced journalism use. In Al Jazeera, for example, I might like them to say, oh, I'm so-and-so from Ramallah and occupied Palestine, whatever, but we don't do that. We just use objective terminology anytime we cover news.
Great, thank you.
I have a question. Brian.
Sure.
I'm going to ask you a question that I always hated getting asked, which is pretty simple, but it will have a complex answer. Who's your competitive set? And part of the way I always began the answer by saying, well, we compete against everybody for people's eyeballs and people's attention and people's trust. So I'll stipulate that you're competing against everybody.
It is a very difficult question, and I've been asked it 100 times at least. And what I think best describes who we are is we have our own unique niche in the marketplace. If you start with our mission, you start competing with Al Jazeera and some of the other more popular brands, there's a tendency to go their way, to use their terminology, to become popular. So we are known as the American channel. We are funded by the U.S. government. As I said, we don't hide from that. But we also practice journalism. We tell both sides of the story. And our focus groups, time and time again, show that people like that. We may not have the huge audiences that Al Jazeera used to have, but our audience believe that they have benefited because they have listened to our program and heard both sides of the story. So I'm not sure who I'm competing with. In reality, I'm not competing with anyone. I'm presenting news in a fair and accurate way, and I'm helping to present America in a fair and accurate way that rebuts a lot of the distortions that exist out there. I don't think any other channel, including other foreign international broadcasters, has that same mission. So I guess the bottom line is we are who we are, and that is what guides us on making our editorial decisions every day.
If I'm a viewer in Egypt, say, do I tune into you directly? Do I come hit you by accident and stay? Do I have am I thinking, well, I'd rather, I'm thinking I want to hear about the American election. Maybe I'll go to Al Jazeera. Maybe I'll go to Al Hurra. How do you? Because this was always another thing in our world. People would be able to say, well, who's your average viewer? And how would you describe the attributes of your average viewer?
That's a tough question, and we really haven't done enough research. In general, we believe that as many viewers stumble across us through the remote with all these channels. That's what people do all day long, is just cruise through the different channels. And then they find something they like and they stop. I don't know what percentage there is, but that is a category. There are some people who know who we are and that we have a certain kind of information that they're not going to get elsewhere. During the January 2011 revolution, in Egypt, our numbers went up by a huge amount. So I have to believe that they sought us out because they wanted to hear what was really happening. In fact, I later talked to the then information minister, who was a member of the Brotherhood, and he told me during that period of time, January, February of 2011, he watched Al Hurra, and he really did. He wasn't just telling me that because he knew the names of all the correspondents and the different events, but because he wanted to know both sides of the story. He knew if he went to Al Jazeera, he would hear one skew, and if he went to Al Arabiya, he'd get another. He wanted to hear both sides of the story. Now, when the crisis fades, normal viewing habits return, the audience goes down. We have that effect in this country. So, but to answer your question, we don't know. We don't know enough about how people make their media choices. In fact, our director of research has been proposing that we do a series of focus groups to try to get at that question better. Yeah.
I think I'm not the only one here who has taken to heart the point that Aziz and you have made about, you are a U.S. government media outlet. Therefore, it'd be kind of nice if you had a regular and significant number of U.S. officials appearing on both TV and radio. And you're going to fix that. So.
Rick's making a note of it.
The other side to that, though, and this is picking up on, I can't remember whether it was Abdurrahim or Hisham said it. If we, and when I say we, I mean Rick, are able to, deliver the level of U.S. official voice that you warrant, I think it's equally important, and I'm not saying it would be any other way, but it's struck in my mind. I've listened to a lot of BBC Arabic and know it to be true, that those tend to be pretty hard-hitting interviews, not unfairly so, but with the interviewer really challenging the U.S. official, and he or she's got to be ready for it, be ready to not only articulate a policy, but to defend it against reasoned criticism, because you would do it no other way. But, you know, when we talk again about the credibility factor, well, there are some places we're just not going to go. We're not going to use the loaded terminology. We can't. Yeah. You know, that is going to cause us a little bit of slippage somewhere, just because, you know, the reflex response is, oh, there they go, it's all about U.S. propaganda. Yeah. It isn't. But one way I think we can offset that is, you know, when you've got the undersecretary in the opposite chair of just, again, in a not an unfair or biased way, just be sure that these are really challenging interviews, and that our principles are going to be required, again, not only to state policy, but to defend it against the kinds of criticisms that are going through the minds of a whole lot of people out there that we want to listen. And the last thing I'll say is I was thinking about it as I said it, but I think it was great that the president's first interview ever as president of the United States was to an Arabic language television. Should have been Al Hurra.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you saying that, because we all believe that too. We were extremely disappointed, and it's been a number of years since, and we still haven't had President Obama on, which is a disappointment. So, but we certainly take all the points. Michelle, as our State Department correspondent, is the person typically that would do those interviews, and I don't know if you want to respond to that, or at least comment on it.
When we have the podium, we are doing so, and the daily press briefing at the State Department, we ask the tough questions, and we get the answers that are in the guidance, you know.
Yeah.
But,
you'll never get anything. I'm sorry. Yeah, I withdraw that.
That's why when we have an interview, we don't waste time to press on something, because we know that we are wasting time asking or repeating the question because we will not get the answer that we need, because the officials usually have guidance and they should be staying in message. But in the daily press briefing and when we have the podium, we are asking the tough questions. And you can watch maybe the State Department briefings.
And whatever answer you get, I think the fact that you are heard to be asking the tough questions counts for a lot with audiences.
Exactly, but sometimes when we have an interview with an official, we have a specific time, 5-10 minutes, and that's it, and you know that.
I know, come on, I was always more generous than that.
Brian, let me ask about an issue that Abu Rahim talked a little bit about with regard to Al Jazeera. He talked about how there's some sense of disappointment in the Maghreb that the newscast for the Maghreb is carried later than the main newscast on Al Jazeera, and I'm wondering how that kind of question factors into programming for Al Hurra. And obviously, in the last 10 years, we've seen a huge amount of change on the media landscape, but especially in the political landscape in the 22 countries you're in. Countries that in the past didn't make news because there were dictatorships, one-party states, countries where U.S. relations remained fairly stable for quite some time have radically shifted, and there's news on a daily basis with regard to our policies with Libya, Syria, Tunisia. It's not just Iraq and Lebanon, which it was at the outset, arguably, for Al Hurra. And I'm wondering how you've adjusted to that, and whether you see whether this model is going to be the permanent model for the network going forward.
Well, it is tough, as I said in my earlier comments. I mean, it's a huge region, many time zones, and to come up with a pan-Arab strategy is difficult. I mean, one thing we try to do, is to place certain programs on given the time of day as it goes across the region. We need to do more of that. We need to, if we're going to have to stay with the Pan-Arab strategy, which I see no other choice right now, we have to find ways to operate better within that strategy. And I think what you're suggesting is something that we've been thinking about, is to have a Maghreb bureau that we could produce maybe an evening newscast that's timing would fit their time zone versus the rest of the Middle East. Those are things that we have to do. But you're right. I mean, we had very few people in Libya or Algeria and all those countries a few years ago. And so we've had to, this is once again, these internal reallocations we've had to make. We haven't gotten more money for more correspondents, so we've had to take them from here to move them there. And that's hard to do because then a story will occur in the West Bank that we took the correspondent away. So making those changes and adapting to this new world in the Middle East is very difficult. But we need to find a way to work within the limitations of our strategy. And that's something that we're focusing on quite a bit these days. Michael.
Hey, thank you for the excellent presentation, and thank you for all your hard work. Just a few quick observations. You know, when the White House sent to us in the fall a memorandum that asked agencies like ours and others to take assets from Europe and focus them on Africa, the Middle East, Asia. And I think what we have here is a mature broadcasting age, 10 years now. And I think that this board is at a critical juncture to figure out sort of where to go. I mean, by necessity, it was a Pan-Arab because that was the way to do it. But you've seen with the stream in Iraq, we were in Cairo, and saw the mature media space there. You've done a great job, and particularly there, with partnering with Al Hayat to do not just the Raheen show, but also election coverage on the ground in Egypt. And I see some real promising aspects there that are
we discussed some co-production opportunities while we were there.
Exactly.
With some of the,
So co-productions on elections, co-productions on these type of shows that are thoughtful, not just straight news, but also I think they're done fairly inexpensively, right, in the grand scheme of it. I know that in the 4 years I've listened to Brian on his budgets, hold, and now he's going to make some cuts, and I do want to touch on that in a minute. But I think that's one of the challenges that we have, where are we supposed to try to do all of these countries all the time, or are we better off? And I know we've tried to get more funds for an Egyptian stream. I know you have the Iraqi stream, but I think there's got to be some hard choices, because that local audience, there's a bunch of the folks that work, the local production crew that does the show, the young people, all born and raised in Cairo, went to college there. They're like, they don't watch us. Because they got 2 more of these than I have right now, because they're all talking and getting their information from this, and they're all plugged in. Yeah. They're all plugged in. There's 30 million people, and they're all talking to each other, and they're all that age. And I think we got to, think hard. I know that the research you do on Sawa helps a lot. And that's the other challenge with this research, right? We've got $8 million to spread it over 100 countries. In the end, you're just throwing a pebble into the water and really learning about where the audience is. And so that's a never-ending challenge that we face.
Mike, adding to that, because a show like Raheen, which is the new reality show, that one is not extremely expensive to do. And that has what Abdurrahim called earlier today the genuineness. In order to relate, to be relevant. You asked a minute ago Jeff, you said, well, does it matter if you have these words? You're referring to martyr and occupied. In my opinion, you can't have those words anyway, because we have to be objective. But that's not even the point. The point is, when you have properties that are relevant, like a Raheen in Egypt, young show, everybody's hooked up, everybody's digitally related to the TV show, and then you've got the #1 network, this Al Hayat, who sees that it's got a base that permeates through its society. Christian, Muslim, women, hijab, it's got it all going on, and they're responsive to that. And we can take those types of prototypes, if you will, and partner. Specifically, it's because you can't just say everybody, because it's an ideological region. Everybody's not going to fit. Specifically suited to that, like El Hayat, and that helps us expand. Because money's a problem.
Question. I mean, you have 3 choices. You can continue to broadcast to the whole region, the limited funds. You have the choice of focusing on a couple key places and not broadcasting to the whole region, or focusing on a couple key places and broadcasting that feed to the whole region, understanding that if you focus on Egypt, it may not be as relevant to other places of the region. And I think it's some pretty hard questions to ask with the limited funding. As I said, the board fought pretty hard to get the Egypt funding. You know, Michael was a big driver of that, and we failed, right? We'll try again. But yeah. So anyway, keep going, Michael.
But I think that, you know, part of what Ken was saying is to find a way within that strategy to maximize your impact by region and by country.
Yep.
And there's some modifications that we can make to try to get more impact within the Pan-Arab strategy in key countries.
Well, so just on the news hole, I completely agree with what's been said, that the language you choose and is that language. But I also think that these Raheen shows, these other shows about society, about and us promoting that as Americans with American taxpayer dollars to have this conversation. If those 24-year-olds want to use those words and show how that generation is looking at the world and how they're looking at their place in the world, then so be it, as long as we're promoting a balanced approach to it.
Correct,
which is their words. But when you from the State Department are reporting, you better have the exact, you know, non-judgmental, objective news hole piece of this. And I think this is the uniquest property that we have in all of U.S. international media because of its television and its radio, and everybody's bringing digital up. You know, it's not just a radio across, and so I think this is a unique opportunity. And I went over with Brian and Fran to Dubai and listen. Everybody wants to hear the news in their dialect, right? I'm from Boston. It's wicked hard to hear the news, and in the South you want to say it another way. And that's who you want to go listen to the news from. I don't want the facts to be any different. It's just everybody wants to hear it from their own dialect. That's been true. It's totally true in MBN. Every time you catch one of your reporters, they're like, yeah. I want to hear it from this accent with this accent with this accent, even though it's the same language. So I think we should be, as a board, looking for ways to accommodate some of that. You do have that. You have Egyptians and you have your talents there. But I do think that's part of growing a younger audience. I mean, it's so young. You know, we can't live with a 40, 50, 40-year-old demographic. You know, it's not where that place is, right? So, I mean, we have a job to do to figure that out. I don't know if there's an appropriate place on the budget cuts, but I do want to congratulate you, though, on the talent. The handful of people that I met who are all getting bought up by all these hot commercial properties in Cairo, and they're all now going to be, you know, rich and famous after working here for 5 years. So clearly there's a feeder system that's working, and so that isn't a tribute. If they're coming and poaching your staff, then you're actually doing something right. So yeah, good for us in that the station's 10 years old, and this is the kind of, you know, talent you brought up, but bad now you got to go replace it. So congratulations on that.
Can I jump in on one thing before Matt, on the youth thing? Because I had a question on the youth thing, and I want to ask a question about Sawa, actually. So Sawa was a great idea. I mean, Sawa was an idea of, okay, you know, as you said in your presentation, you know, young people don't care about the news. Let's give them popular music and things that appeal to them, and then give them a little dose of news every hour or something when they're not listening and they're too lazy to change the channel. That was then. I mean, it wasn't that long ago. It was the beginning of last decade. And now we've got, from what I understand in the region, there's, you know, per the comment, people poaching our talent, there's also people poaching our strategy. And now you have lots and lots of different radio stations in the region that do popular music. And it's been a competitive challenge when we launched really only one, and now there's lots of them. And at the same time, you have, as Governor Meehan said, you know, lots and lots of people with smartphones and different devices and all that. In the pursuit of youth, which has been kind of the hallmark of Sawa and this organization, is it time to start shifting some of those resources from radio to digital? You know, how do you kind of think of that, you know, that challenge as you pursue the, you know, it's an incredibly young region, right? It's one of the youngest regions in the world. With, you know, how do we pursue that youth?
The Sawa
market?
audience has grown. They were younger than 25 when we started. Now they are younger than 35. We continue to target the younger generations. However, our news is becoming more credible. More newsmakers and older people listen to news, especially when there is something breaking and something going on in the United States. And in terms of news, our newsroom provides digital with lots of reports and lots of news coverage. So we're working together to make their work richer and more up-to-date. And they, in turn, provide this wider hopefully access for the whole region.
That's great. That's exactly what my question was. If you're shifting, not shifting the brand, but shifting the brand from a radio format to a digital format.
Yes.
Over time,
yeah.
Well, just Hutch, I was going to give you praise and then I'll let you speak. He came to the board a year and a half ago, and same thing, right? Brian's like, we got no more money in the Congress. We go back and ask him for more digital money, and they literally, we came here and the web guy wasn't talking to that web guy, and they came in and really moved this needle a lot with no extra funds.
Congratulations.
So, you know, between, and helps with Rob, and, you know, there's little pockets of money that you've been able to find in different other pockets, but congratulations on your presentation.
Anyway, please continue. Well, hold on, before you go, I interrupted you.
Yeah.
Do you have one other thing, and then we'll go back?
Yeah, I also wanted to add that a lot of people still listen to radio in the area. Richer countries, the people there have more smartphones and they're connected that way. But a lot of people do listen to radio, and it is an important thing. And let's remember that you can listen to radio in your car, in your kitchen, wherever you want to. You're not glued to a television screen, and you do not have to have your smartphone with you.
Right.
Yeah,
Please continue.
If you look at our national survey data, as Brian presented, television is by far the most popular source of news and information, and the most popular media source, followed by radio, and internet in most countries trails far behind. The other issue that we've seen from research is that the Sawa audience may not be as focused on the type of news television audience is, but they're still very focused on the news. And we see some of the impact measures that Brian presented for Al Fora about, Al Fora shaping people's views on current affairs or on democracy. We see very high numbers for Radio Sawa as well. So you're reaching different audiences with Radio Sawa and Al Fora with different types of newscasts. But I think that, Radio Sawa is not just for music, it's for news as well, and we're reaching an audience and we're having an impact. So.
Great. Yep.
I think it's also important to be anticipatory about the trends as well. So, the closest we get to is real-time analytics, not huge numbers, but we see what behavior is and what stories people respond to. When we started getting the mobile numbers from the Gulf, that was really surprising. So there's a bifurcated Middle East, clearly. And yes, focusing on the youth through mobile technology in places like North Africa, that's probably not a smart move. But if you can enter the market with an app that's kind of cool that under 30s think is good, and they're listening to the radio station that they listen to in their car, but they're on the bus or whatever, that's one place to start. I think we should make a distinction between broadcast and audio. Audio programming could be anywhere. It could be on Stitcher, it could be on your phone. It doesn't really matter to youth where it comes from. It only matters to us, like where it comes from a tower, it comes from something else. The important thing is that the content is very powerful and compelling. And again, it can't be just straight news. It has to be this blend of lifestyle and news and music and conversation and all these things that we've been experimenting with.
Yeah. I know, I was only going to say, I agree with you. I mean, ultimately, pretty much everybody in media has to have a mobile-first strategy. It's where everything is going. You showed the statistic that penetration in the Middle East is, 31%. But the trajectory of increase is higher than it is anywhere else in the world. And at the end of the day, I mean, kids watch Apocalypse Now on their iPhone. People watch video on that mobile device, and that's the, Murrow talked about the last 3 feet. That's the last 16 inches, and that is where everybody's going to end up, just not all at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, Brian, thanks for the presentation, and what I want to ask, I think, syncs with a lot of the questions before, and that has to do with the syndication, another way of getting your content out. And I was pleased to hear that you are launching a new marketing capability, putting an office out there to syndicate your programs. And I'm really interested in hearing more about that, because it seems to be a good way to get your product out there at potentially a lower cost, potentially a way to offer a localized product, again, at a lower cost. So could you describe what are your goals and how this strategy is going to work?
Well, you have to be very cautious. We're in a very tricky media environment. In most countries, there are very few stations, local stations, that you want to partner with or they want to partner with you. So this isn't, Mexico, where freedom of press is at a different level. The stations are available for the affiliation. That they aren't available in the Middle East. You have to be very cautious. I don't want to just have affiliations to extend the audience. I want to have affiliations that make an impact, because that is what we're primarily interested in. And the conversations I've had with potential affiliates have generally been, well, we're not going to take anything with political content. Once again, it's a highly politicized and polarized environment that we have out there. So to get to your specific question, programs like what Fran has been developing offer the most potential. It can't be a hard-hitting U.S. foreign policy because they're just not going to do that. So the other thing we have to do is we have to listen to the affiliates, and then we have to decide whether that's an affiliate. We don't want the affiliate to be a gatekeeper for what is our content. We want to be the one to decide what our content is. So the first step in terms of our strategy is to hold conversations, to identify in the various markets who would be a potential partner. And then what is the kind of product that we would conceivably want to place on them and that they would be willing to take. And some of that I actually envision is more co-production than just product placement. I think, and we had this conversation when Michael was out there, we can bring something to the table they can't, the local channel, and the local channel can bring something to the table that we can't. So if we can marry up our two areas of expertise, our studios and access to people in this country and to the best of American TV, that may be the best strategy as opposed to us independently developing a program and then trying to place it out there. But do something as a co-production. I think that may hold the best. We've done a few of them. We have had conversations and they seem promising, but we'll have to see how it plays out.
We have time for one more question.
Can I do a quick follow-up on that? So the rest of the networks are have a pretty extensive affiliate strategy and syndication strategy. I'm wondering, are you speaking with them to look at what they've done, what the lessons learned are, how possibly bring in products from our other networks into these partnerships you're exploring or considering?
Well, we've had conversations with Rob. Rob's there, and with Bruce Sherman to explore what their strategies are. I'm sure we can benefit more. We have an advantage, and don't misconstrue my comments is not supportive of what you're proposing. We have a distinct advantage that almost nobody else in international broadcasting has, and that is we have direct access to our market. And that provides an opportunity for us to program what we want to program directly, unfiltered. This is where I think our impact numbers are going to come from. And I want to maintain that part of my delivery, my impact. So I think what you're suggesting can help us extend it. It's low cost. It's a way to target. It has all the advantages that you're talking about. But I never kind of want to lose sight of our basic model, which is a network model, which is a direct satellite, free-to-air satellite. That's the way most people get their news and information in the Middle East. So I got to find a way, back to the strategy question, of marrying the two up, so I also don't give away some of my hottest products. Then that undermines why someone would come to the main network. So there are a lot of issues, Matt, and it's something that I've had conversations with, as I said, Bruce and Rob about, and I'm sure once we have a dedicated group team in the region, who can start knocking on doors, learning the environment, because some of these channels change. The top 3 channels in Egypt didn't exist 5 years ago. And now, you know, I have to ask myself, do I want to be affiliated with any of those channels, given some of the what they broadcast? It can be pretty far out there. So having a presence in the region for that purpose, that express purpose, I think is going to make a big difference.
Great. So we got to conclude it there because we're out of time. Brian, thank you to you and your team for taking the time and for hosting us here today. And
Thank you for coming.
Congratulations again.
Thank you.
Congratulations again on the 10-year anniversary.
Thank you.
So this concludes the formal meeting of our board. I'd ask the board members, we're gonna keep the meeting open, not in here, but to do a short executive session upstairs. So if we can reconvene with some lunch in a couple minutes up where we started the day and do that. Thank you, everybody.
What?